I don't remember the very first time that I saw Max, but it had to have been very early on in 66, 67, 68, something like that. I don't know whether I first met him in Virginia when he had come down to play at Johnson McCree's Jazz Festival in Manassas, Virginia, or whether I first saw him in New York City in the summer of 1967, which is when I arrived. I just dug this copy of the book off the shelf, and it's dated July the 11th, 1967, and I arrived in New York City on June 5th, 1967. So I hadn't been here but 5 weeks. And it says, to Hank O'Neill, best wishes, Max Kaminsky, July 11th, 1967. And then he drew a picture of a whale.
Could you hold that up so that all readers?
It looks
Okay.
it looks like that. This is the whale down here at the bottom. And so, remember the first thing that I remember anybody saying about Maxie, Eddie Condon loved him. And at this time, I believe he was playing at Ryan's, the only place left on the street. Well, the Hickory House was still there, was on 52nd Street, but it lasted about 10 minutes after I got here. But Eddie used to say about Maxie that Maxie had time and he had tone. And he liked him a lot. And, well, you can tell that he liked him a lot. I mean, Maxie turned up on so many of the town hall concerts and the ones that came from the other studios and from Carnegie Hall. But Max was a guy who was kind of a forgotten guy. He played extraordinarily well, and I know that about a decade after I got that book, I wanted to make a record with Max. I wanted him to play pretty. I didn't want him to be a Dixieland player. I just wanted him to play straight ahead kind of stuff. And got a few dollars together to put together a band that could do something like that. And the record that we wound up making was this one. It's called When Summer Is Gone. And this was sort of a joint record of Johnny DeVries did the cover, who was an old friend of Max's, and he wrote the liner notes in conjunction with Phyllis Condon. They're the funniest notes that probably have appeared. Well, actually, Johnny wrote some notes about Bud Freeman that were just ridiculously funny, but these are pretty good in their own right. But we put together a band that is as un-Dixielandy as you could possibly be. I mean, it's Bucky Pizzarelli, John Bunch, George DeVivier, and Ronnie Traxler. And the songs that are on here that Max and I sat down and made I wanted him to do a handful of Noel Coward things. There are 4 Noel Cowards on here. The only one that is not just sort of a pretty ballad is the last track that Max did, which was, I said, Max, let's get something that's got a little bit of out of the ballad range to end the record with. And this is just a head arrangement that they put together on the spot. And at the end of it, Max said to me, I mean, they played their butts off. It was wonderful. Max said to me, "Is that what you wanted?" And I said, "Yeah, that's wonderful." So that's what we call the record. Is that what you wanted? It's the only track on the album. Everything is there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them are 3-minute songs. One of them is a 4. That's one of the vocals. The 2 longest songs are the vocals, other than Is That What You Wanted? And the vocals on this album are the clearest indication of what a skilled musician that Max was. There is a young female vocalist who appears on 2 tracks on this, whose name was Mary Island. And she was not well known to any of the people on the album. Not known at all, certainly not to Max. But she had a very pure, crystalline, extraordinarily pretty voice. And Max listened to her and thought she was terrific. And but as it turned out, this was her recording debut, other than maybe something she had recorded in the bathtub or something, or in the shower, and picked out the 2. She did the title thing, When Summer Is Gone, and she did Blame It on My Youth, which is not an easy song. But I forget which of the first of the 2 that she did, but whatever one it was, she was sufficiently inexperienced that she didn't want to sing with the band live. She couldn't. She was afraid she'd make a mistake and this and that. She wanted to have the possibility of overdubbing. So that meant putting Mary in the vocal booth. Well, that added a wrinkle to the recording in that whereas Bucky Pizzarelli and John Bunch and George Duvivier and so forth and Ronnie are studio guys who, wore earphones their entire lives in the studios of New York City in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Maxie had never worn earphones in his life. And he had no idea of how to, do that and listen and play and so forth. So we were at a bit of a crossroads, and the way it worked out was that Mary went into the vocal booth and Max stood right next to it by the window where Mary was singing. And Mary was facing him, looking out over a music rack and a microphone. And everybody says that, this musician doesn't listen carefully, or this one does listen carefully. In this instance, Max could hear well enough through the vocal booth and watching her mouth. He didn't miss a note and played along with her as she sang and so forth. It was just extraordinary. I'd never seen anything quite like that. But he was he was a guy who had been successful at playing in dance bands, played in big bands. He played in a joint on, 52nd Street. He played at Jimmy Ryan's. That's what he was doing when he signed this book. And there wasn't, I believe the big band he played with, Artie Shaw, as I recall.
I wanted to say something about that because you would have to be an extraordinarily professional musician to be with Artie Shaw or Tommy Dorsey for a number of years in both cases. So he was reading, he was part of a section. P.S. in Artie Shaw's, there was a lead trumpeter whose name may have been Steve Lipkins, I'm not sure, and it was Max and Lips Page. Mm-hmm. But so he was an extraordinary professional. Sure. And the other side, since I've hijacked this interview for a second, is that I saw him maybe in 1971, a very small man with large black horn-rimmed glasses at Ryan's, playing Tin Roof Blues with a plunger mute. That was in some way what the public expected of him. But he could do so much more.
Sure. You listen to him on the Clambake 7.
Yes.
What a wonderful band that was. who's better? What was the better little band in a big band, the Clambake Seven or the Bobcats? I don't know. And is that straight ahead Dixieland? Well, no.
Who cares?
Yeah, it's just really good and
music.
really hot, and you bang your foot to it and so forth. So,
But there's a Commodore date where it's Max and Frank Orchard and Rod Kless and James P. in the rhythm section, and I wouldn't take anything away from Bobby Hackett or Billy Butterfield or Wild Bill, but Max's playing is extraordinary.
yeah,
For straight ahead, beautiful
yeah.
lead and logical improvisation.
He's a wonderful player. I remember the last time that I remember working with Max would have been, I don't remember when Max died. I guess I could look it up, but the last time I remember was taking him to Princeton, New Jersey. And this is we made a record of this. Every year, Squirrel Ashcraft had a reunion of his band in at Princeton, the Princeton Triangle Jazz Band that he played with, and every year, I mean, it was always the same people. It was Jack Howe and Spencer Clark and folks like that, and they always had a ringer. They always had Bob Haggart came, or Maxine Sullivan came to sing a song. And one year it was Max Kaminsky came and played. And we recorded that. I mean, it's not a particularly great recording because generally speaking, the band played in a tent somewhere on the grounds of Princeton. And tents tend to not have very good acoustics or very good pianos either. But I remember taking Maxie down there for that performance, and it was probably the last time that I worked with him.
He lived until September 1994,
Wow.
says my telephone.
Wow, your telephone is smart.
Yeah, smarter than